everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and online role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another Roll20 review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the marketplace section of online role-playing website Roll20.net. With this video, we'll be looking at the Roll20 adaptation of The Lost Mine of Phandelver, the introductory D&D 5th edition adventure included in the Dungeons & Dragons starter kit. The Roll20 module originally launched last year as the first officially licensed D&D adventure in the Roll20 marketplace. It has since been given an extensive 1.1 patch, and this review does cover that version of the module. Roll20 also provided a press review copy of the module for the purposes of this review. The Lost Mine of Phandelver was the earliest content published for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, even before the actual player's handbook and monster manuals. It's a level 1 adventure designed to ease new players and DMs into D&D, and it's been widely regarded as one of the best adventures Wizards of the Coast has ever designed, introductory or otherwise. It takes place in and around the area of Phandelver, a small town near the Sword Coast. It features multiple factions, dungeons, and side quests, with a fun plot full of daring rescues, ending with a deep dive into the titular mine. If you followed our D&D adventures here on YouTube, you remember we ran this adventure as our first foray into 5th edition, and frankly had a wonderful time with it. By the way, if you're interested in the adventure's length, Lost Mine of Phandelver takes players from level 1 to level 4, almost level 5. It took us 18 sessions, averaging about 2.5 hours per session, which equals about 45 hours total. So that's longer than a lot of level 1 intro adventures that tend to only get you to level 2, maybe 3, and obviously far shorter than the full published campaigns like Storm King's Thunder. Man, I wish this module had existed back when I ran it. The Roll20 module is absolutely worth the price if you plan on playing it in Roll20. It's a huge time saver, well organized, and all the tokens, maps, and dynamic lighting is in place. Now, it will require some additional tweaks and some work, as it doesn't add much beyond what was originally published in the adventure, such as a few battle maps for side quests and some NPC pictures and handouts. But it definitely provides the main entree to the best course meal of D&D 5th edition. That concludes my awful cooking analogies. So what do you get for the $19.99 Roll20 Lost Mine of Phandelver package? You get the Lost Mine of Phandelver adventure divided into 4 acts. You get 5 battle maps, all gridded or modified for 5-foot squares or subdivisions with dynamic lighting for Roll20 subscribers. You get the overland map of the Sword Coast. You get 26 monster sheets, each with a draggable token. You get 5 ready-to-play player character sheets, all with rollable tokens. Extensive notes on named NPCs, and of course the fully searchable database of the standard rules document for 5th edition. You'll find all the information you'll need in the journal. In fact, there's a rather large note on the landing page you can see right here that directs you to the adventure overview section. I kind of like that there's a decent amount of hand-holding with this module, as I suspect this will be many people's first steps into either Roll20 or Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, or both, as it was with my gaming group. There is a DMs folder. Where are you, DMs folder? Up at the top, which has all your monster sheets, some maps, which are definitely DM only because they've got all the just full map pictures on there. And all the monsters have draggable tokens, and when I mean draggable tokens, we're actually going to hop into a map real quick, is you can open up a character sheet, and you can literally just click and hold and drag this token onto the map, and boom, you've got instant monster, which is really, really cool and handy, and it's already, I believe, is it linked to the... Yes, it is actually linked to the character sheet. It doesn't have the numbers in place. You'd have to enter in all the numbers and armor class, which all the tokens on the board have hit points and armor class already set up in there just to make it easier. So any tokens you would have to add to that. But that's an easy way to add tokens onto the map, which is pretty nifty. Player handouts. Let's go to player handouts section. A little farther down, has all your monster images. So this is where the DM, for example, once the players actually fight the goblins, you can go to the goblin picture and then show this to your players so they get a nice image to go along rather than just having to stare at the little token down here. You also get a note on conditions that can be helpful for both players and the DM. Link to where you can find the D&D basic rules, which came with the starter kit. Again, this is before even the player's handbook came out, and it's kind of like an easy mode version of the rules. It's actually very well done. And then the only handout in the entire adventure that's actually a picture handout is this letter you find that kind of furthers the plot along somewhat, introduces you to the Black Spider character. So it's a little lacking in just straight images. You've got your monsters, and there's not a whole lot of like background scenery or people images. Bit of a bummer there. However, you can find notable NPCs, which is given their entire separate section. Now this is nice because there are quite a number of NPCs in the Lost Mine of Phandelver. You get a whole section of how to properly roleplay an NPC party member. They do provide extra pictures for Sildar and Glassstaff, which are two of the bigger named NPCs in the campaign. Sildar being an ally and Glassstaff being a foe. However, none of the merchants get pictures. An odd thing, and I'm not sure why they did this, they gave all of the merchants a full character sheet, even though it's basically blank. Like, they're not really full characters. So I don't know why this couldn't have been just done as a handout. What's nice here, also, a breakdown real quick, the GM notes. This is something specifically for the DM to read that you know, that the players don't necessarily know. So if you want to actually show them, which unfortunately, again, there's no picture for any of these, so they would just get this information right here for whatever reason. Or you could just read them this information, whereas this is just for you, the DM, to know. It is nice that they have extra tokens and pictures for characters like Sildar and Glassstaff. Gundren and Nundro both do have tokens at their respective places. For some reason, their pictures don't actually show up here, the tokens. And then the only real missing one is Rayadoth, who I think is supposed to have a token and be on the Thunder Tree map, but he's not. His character sheet is filled out correctly, though, I believe. That's Glassstaff. As a druid, yeah. And it still has all the extensive notes on there, so again, it's just the actual picture itself. I'm not going to go over the entire adventure, but it is spelled out over 4 acts, each with an overview section and keyed map locations. This tells you what to do in each act, and then this gives you a nice breakdown of how to operate each dungeon, and it's got little annotated GM symbols on here, which is nice. You can see these giant floating numbers, circle numbers on the map. Your players do not see this. Don't be concerned about that. This is actually placed on the GM layer, which means only you see this. So it's only that you can see, okay, what does this room mean, and you can find the corresponding information about it. Act 3 does suffer a bit, as the PCs are designed to go on several side quests, but unfortunately most didn't come with maps. Again, this is the original adventure that didn't have this. When I ran this campaign, I found and downloaded maps into Roll20 so we could use them. Thankfully, Lost Mine of Phandelver is a very popular campaign. Pretty much everybody that's done 5th edition has played this campaign, so there are a lot of resources and content out there that you can find and download, Reddit, Google image search, whatever, so you can find the maps that you need. It's mainly Wyvern Tor and Old Owl Well that have no maps. You can see here, it's just... and they even put a note on here. No, there are no battle maps for this encounter. We provide the random battle map page. Well, okay, the random battle map page is just a blank white page, which you could use, but it is something to note. And it's hard to fault Roll20 for this because the original adventure did not have those maps. That would definitely be extra work to put in an original map on there. It would be really nice to see that, especially because Roll20 does have a lot of marketplace maps, so they could certainly try to utilize something, but as far as I'm aware, for the most part, none of their paid modules put in extra maps. They do extra pictures of tokens and characters, which is nice, but in terms of full battle maps, they pretty much just adapt the ones that are in the original adventures. Let's take a look at the maps for realsies this time. We're going to start with the Sword Coast Overland map. Now, I love a good overland map, both as a DM and a player. It excites my curiosity. I just love looking at cool, like, fantasy maps of forests and rivers and dungeons and all that good stuff. I hate the way they set this map up. It's bad. It's not good. So the reason it's darkened here is they used Fog of War to hide parts of the map so that your players are only going to see this little bit of lit section right here, which is just nothing. And the reason they do that is because obviously this map has a ton of spoilers on it. This is basically only a DM map because literally a lot of these locations your players don't know about until they learn about it. In fact, the main plot of the adventure is essentially to find the location of Wave Echo Cave. So they literally can't know that location. What Roll20 has done with future maps, and again I'm reviewing this a year after it's come out, so I have since reviewed and looked at other Roll20 modules, is they put all of the locations on the GM layer, open up the map, and then you can add in all that hidden information as your players discover it, and that works really, really well. And I love it because then your players can still see the whole map, but the information that needs to be hidden is still hidden, like you would a dungeon, except without dynamic lighting, obviously. So this is a bummer that this kind of predates that feature, or that concept that they put forward, and they never went back and changed it. So this is kind of bad. What I did, and again, this is the original adventure, just had this map, so it's not a good player map. Again, you can find a player map of this exact map. In fact, you can probably find it on my website because I used it. In fact, if you Google image search for Phandelver, you'll probably find quite a few images and content. What I would do is find a player map that doesn't have that in there, and then you can open that map up and then add these on the GM layer or however you want to do it. So it's an extra bit of work. Yes, you can use this map. You can just reveal things by the Fog of War as your players discover it, but I think that's kind of crappy. So it's unfortunate. And it's unfortunate it's like the first thing your players see is this little this nice gorgeous map that only the DM sees, and then they just see this little bit of box. Oh, that's too bad. Maps are good, don't hide the maps. That map aside, all the dungeons are fantastic. And I really hope if you go with this module you also subscribe to Roll20 for its excellent dynamic lighting feature. Let's jump into the Red Brand hideout. I've run games with and without dynamic lighting, and it's very much worth having if you're serious about playing RPGs on Roll20. And the nice thing is only the DM has to be the subscriber, and feel free to make your players chip in for it. And you can see here, that's what your players would see when they're walking through. That looks awesome. You can see there, it's nice little blockers everywhere. Doors do their things, make all the blocking. You've probably noticed, well, you'll notice now if I go to dynamic lighting, all the doors have like a red bar on them, which allows you to easily grab this red bar and move it to literally open and close the door. I'm getting a little more in-depth about the mechanics of Roll20 because I have a feeling that this video will have some more newer DMs, newer players, new people to Roll20 watching it than most of the people that watch my videos, which are probably super into Roll20. But hey, I hope everybody's watching this video too because these modules are nifty. So it's nice to have. The blockers work really well for all these maps. This little bit right here, like for traps, is on the GM layer. All the numbers are on the GM layer. Tokens have proper hit points and armor class setup. One interesting note is that as a DM, one of the things I would do is go through and actually randomly roll for hit points because everything on here just uses the average, which is fine, and you can do that, but I think it adds a nice little random quality that some enemies might be weaker, some might be stronger, and your players can't kind of meta game the system by knowing, okay, well, I know that the ruffian is basically a bandit, which has 16 hit points, and they're all going to have 16 hit points. Well, I would go through and just roll for hit points for everybody. So again, that's a little bit of extra work you can do, but I think a lot of people that buy this module would then jump in and start tweaking with it instead of just immediately rolling with it, but you do have the option of just rolling with it, which is obviously a big advantage to buying the module. So tokens and lighting effects are in the right spots. There are some adjustments you may need to make. What are some good examples of that? So like Thunder Tree, which and there's some blockers, but you might want to put in more for the trees. Let's see, dynamic lighting. Again, this is kind of nitpicky and however you want to do. Like this section is supposed to have spider webs on it, and it's listed as like a hidden trap right here. Giant spider webbing I don't think is hidden. I'm pretty sure you can see it, and I think that's cool. Like that's always a neat thing in in any fantasy game. You walk into an area and there's spider webs everywhere. It's like, oh shit, here comes the giant spiders. Damn you, Tolkien, for ruining giant spiders for us all. So I would definitely include some like webbing on this map, for example. But otherwise, everything is blocked out pretty well. This is where Rayadoth is supposed to be, so I don't know why his token is not added to this section. I guess he's supposed to be just like an event, like you walk in the door and he just talks to you. But again, you've got no picture, you've got no token. Could use a little bit of visual aid here, I think. Now, a special note, you've probably noticed the token size on Thunder Tree and on Wave Echo Cave, and we'll jump over to that one as well. The original adventure had these, and they still are, 10-foot square grids. That doesn't work for 5th edition. You need 5-foot square grids, or else combat just immediately falls apart. Unfortunately, they drew them all for 10-foot square grids just to help kind of fit them. So the way Roll20 fixed it, and again, I believe they went back and fixed this for the 1.1 patch, which is what I'm looking at and reviewing, is they subdivided the grid. So if you look at the measurement, you can see, I guess I could zoom in a little bit too. Let's actually go to the Flame Skull area because that's a cool area. Alright, so you can see here each little, the actual square itself is 10 feet long, 10 feet wide, which means every token is 5 by 5. Unfortunately, that means every token is a quarter of the size of what they normally are. So your players entering this map will be like, whoa, we're super tiny. Well, that's why, and that's kind of how you have to convert it in order to make this map work. There's really two ways to do this. You can either do it this way, which is just subdivide the grids, or you can double the map dimensions and blow it up, which I have done. And thankfully, the map resolutions are fairly high enough to where either zooming in this way or blowing up the map, neither of them look horrible. I think they look perfectly fine. It's just kind of a, it's just something you have to pay attention to. It's like, why are the tokens super tiny? Well, it's the original adventure did it this way, and thankfully Roll20 does make that adjustment. It's only on the Wave Echo Cave and the Ruins of Thunder Tree maps. The rest are 5-foot grids, so they work much better. The way I fixed it, because they didn't have this Roll20 module when I ran Phandelver, is I just found maps. Again, there's tons of resources out there, and I just found proper 5-foot maps that people recreated. But thankfully here you can use the original maps. And there's some, everything's GM annotated here. There's notes on doors. One thing, and I kind of make this complaint on all my Roll20 reviews so far, and maybe someday Roll20 will start fixing it. I wish they would do doors. They've got lots of nice doors in the Roll20. Let's search door. Look at that. There's a lot of door. I mean, in my library alone that I've used, I've got a ton of different doors. You can just slap a door on there and it looks way better than this white rectangle. That's something that if I were running it, I would start with this module and then start adding little fun tweaks like that just to make it look good. I do want to give a shout out to the PC. Where are you? Player character sheets. Here we go. And let's jump back to the landing page. Zoom out back a little bit. Okay. So the original adventure, again, because it's designed for starter level 1 characters and it's a starter kit, it comes with pre-made player character sheets, 5 of them. 2 human fighters, elf, wizard, halfling, rogue, dwarf, cleric, pretty standard archetypal characters. And the reason for that is because, again, this is supposed to be a starter adventure, and people might not be familiar with D&D. And one thing that D&D does badly, which a lot of RPGs do, is it makes you make a character and make a lot of permanent decisions before you ever play the game, which is very tricky. Every RPG that does that, I'm just like, I don't know which character I want to play. I don't know how the game plays. And that, and a lot of people have to go through that, intro hour of the game or whatever, several times with different characters to find somebody that you like. So this one provides a bunch of characters. It's only useful if you're actually going to use these characters. I know a lot of people that would be really excited about D&D would obviously want to make their own because that's a big part of the game. But they are provided there. They've all got their sheets built up. All the information is here. I believe when you buy the campaign, you can actually choose which kind of character sheet you use. This is kind of the official open game license character sheet provided by Roll20. There are better ones. I know for my campaign we use a slightly more attractive one called the D&D 5e shaped character sheet. So don't be looking at this going like, oh, is that the only one? No, there's tons of options you can do. But character sheets are built in. All of these things are hyperlinked. You can click anything and it'll appear directly here. Let's see, what's an example? There we go. So like that's what an attack looks like. This particular character sheet puts in 2 attacks because of the advantage-disadvantage system. Good lord, that is a hell of a roll. Holy crap. This guy's really good with his longbow. He's got a +7 level 1. Good old 5th edition. I just destroyed some goblin with that one. A cool thing that this module provides is these tokens are rollable, and rollable tokens means you can switch their picture around while still keeping the same token. So for example, I can right click here, multi-sided, choose side, and you can actually scroll through and choose what kind of picture you want, which is really cool. There's like a dozen different options here. So that's a really neat feature, and it also is available for doppelgangers. Any shapeshifter in a campaign on these Roll20 modules, they will provide a rollable token. Strahd was really cool in the Curse of Strahd one. You can switch them back and forth, and these are all. None of these images or pictures were in the original starter adventure. They didn't have pictures for any of the PCs, so that's a really cool feature that Roll20 provides. So thumbs up for that one. And also on the sheets, all their background information, everything is provided. They all tie into the campaign, which, by the way, I would look at even if you're not going to make, you're not going to use these characters at all. You know, this is a totally extra feature that was just optional. I would still look at the background because they do a really cool job of tying in, I think, all of these characters into the actual story of the campaign to where they would be relevant, which is neat. Especially the rogue, I believe, was actually involved in the Red Brand gang that you deal with, which is really cool. Thumbs up for that one. So, the Roll20 module of Lost Fun of Phandelver is my instant recommendation for anyone who wants to start playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition online. Final pros and cons for my Roll20 review. Pros, all the battle maps have been properly converted to use 5-foot grids or subdivided grids. They all have proper dynamic lighting. Again, just minor tweaks here and there, but for the most part, all the maps work really well. There's a nicely organized information for DMs, including a simple guide to the pre-made PCs. This is actually really cool. If they do end up using these pre-made PCs, you've got all this quick notes on their role-playing personalities as well as their passive perception, I believe this is supposed to say. What I would have liked to add is the 8 armor class for every character, because as a DM you are constantly asking your players, what's your armor class? Did this hit you? That's a good information to have. Easily draggable tokens for each monster. Now future Roll20 modules have an entire page full of tokens, which is very nice and something that I create whenever I make a campaign. I have a whole GM landing page. But you can just open up any of these and drag that token right onto the board, which is really easy to have and nice. They just don't have quite the numbers built in yet. You get tokens and pictures for some important NPCs like Gundren, Sildar, and Glassstaff. Again, that's something the original adventure did not provide, so that's nice to have. I wish we would have gotten at least one for Rayadoth. It seems like a weird one to miss. Maybe I just made him a bigger character than he's supposed to be. I know he was a whole, like, sit down, I can tell you about things and buff you up with my spells. So, I mean, his character sheet is there, and that's the important part. And finally, pre-made PCs have tokens with multiple picture options. Again, really cool, but entirely optional if you're just going to make your own PCs. Cons, there's no additional battle maps for unmapped sections of the adventure. As I mentioned earlier, you'll probably want to at least find actual maps of Wyvern Tor and Old Owlwell. There is a random battle map section, but it's just a blank page. And I would recommend at least getting one random battle map to use that's like a generic forest or something, just to help fill it out. So you will need a couple more maps. But again, none of those, it's not like it's missing any maps from the original adventure. Just the original adventure itself is basically missing maps for sections that would have combat in them. Old Owlwell and Wyvern Tor definitely have. Old Owlwell maybe. You could, I guess, talk your way out of that one. But Wyvern Tor is like a cave full of orcs. That's Combat City. The Phandelver town map should have been GM layered and annotated instead of placing everything on the token layer for players to see. That's really nitpicky. I don't think we actually looked at that map yet, did we? Again, when I ran this map, I used a player map which hid all this information, and then I only added a couple on there as I wanted to tell my players about them. To me, if you just hand your players this map, this is very overwhelming for a DM because your players are going to immediately start asking all these questions, wanting to go to all these locations. That could be fun for you. That's fine. For me, that would have been a nightmare, especially because I was very new to D&D in 5th edition. So I hid all this information and just gave them a couple things. I think I only ended up using 3 or 4 locations as I needed them. So I would use a different map than this one, but this one, I mean, it could be fine. The Sword Coast map, I definitely went over the problems earlier. I would have rather it be GM annotated instead of having the Fog of War on there. I don't think that looks very good at all. Also, no pictures for magic items, which, again, future modules do have. Where are the magic items? I think they're just mentioned in a note. Right here, yeah, in the DMs folder. So it lists all the magic items that are used and like what they are. But in future modules, they would have a whole folder full of magic items as handouts that you could show your players that have the nice picture from the DM's guide. Or, I mean, and there were pictures from the original adventure, so that actually is missing here of a few magic items. I did find 2 errors. The first is that all the zombies on the Thunder Tree map are supposed to be ash zombies, which granted them an extra ability called Ash Puff, which is kind of like a, I think it was a blinding thing or choking thing or something. I don't remember exactly, but as far as I can tell, they're just regular zombies, and their character sheet just has. Oh, that's the handout. Where's zombie? They don't have any kind of that ability on there, so I guess technically a minor thing. I mean, it's just one simple ability that goes off like once, but it was kind of a cool thematic thing because Thunder Tree is supposed to be this town ruined by a volcano, so that's why all the creatures are, all the zombies were just ash and soot. The other error, which I don't think we've seen the Cragmaw Castle yet, which this one, by the way, I want to highlight is really good on the dynamic lighting. They actually blocked a lot of the things that should be blocked, like rubble and curtains and things, which is good. I would have gone a step further and blocked the arrow slits, frankly, because they're supposed to be 10 feet high in the air, so I would not let your character see into those if they were walking around, but the enemy could see out of them. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So this character, Virith, is a doppelganger, so it's got the multi-sided token, which is cool. However, the written description of this character, and I remember it explicitly because I ran this adventure, and this was a very cool scene that happened in our campaign, is described as a female drow form, but clearly this token is the male drow. This is the generic, like, drow wizard form, which I believe is the same used for Nesnar, too. So that might be confusing. You can either change that to a male or come up with a different picture, but that is, I think, supposed to be a female drow. Final verdict. If you're new to D&D 5th edition and want to play on Roll20, Lost Mine of Phandelver is the single best purchase you can make. It's a solid, lengthy adventure, and the module faithfully recreates most of the maps and tokens that you'll need. It does go a step further on the token area and not so much on the map area, so you will need to spend some time tweaking it, particularly with the side quests that lack the battle maps that you will need, but this module is a huge time saver and a great introduction to Dungeons and Dragons. Thank you for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com, and you can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.